Today, we are looking at the fraud risk. Fraud risk after COVID actually pivoted as well. All right, after COVID, pivot is a most often used term, and unfortunately for fraud risk, I think it pivoted as well. Now, so what do we do for charities? Charities comprise mainly small organizations and so on. I think the risk of fraud would be could even be higher. So let me walk through what are the key aspects of risk management that you can sort of think about and consider whether or not your charity would have, and if not, maybe beef up some of these areas. Now, foremost, I think the foremost important thing is about setting the control environment. All right, this is where culture is all about. Tone from the top, be it from top management, and also from the board. All right, so the board would have to give that signal. In fact, the board has to embed a culture which is not only high performing, but also centered on strong, sound values. All right, values which enhance performance and as well as make sure accountability is being observed. So this is what we call soft controls. All right, soft controls are the more challenging aspect. It takes a while for it to work, but then if it works, it is absolutely transformational. All right, and it sets the foundation for all other controls. All right, now so culture, pay attention to culture. This is where you should pay attention. Now next, then comes the controls. All right. Controls can be divided into two major aspects, one of which is preventive. Now, preventive is less costly because it is proactive, all right? So it prevents things from happening, all right? So it reduces or even avoid risk altogether, all right? So this is where we should pay most of our attention on things like restricted access, edit checks, authorization, segregation of duties. All these are very stable, but then they are so fundamental, they are so critical, especially for small organizations whereby you don't have many staff. All right, in that case, then maybe you should also supplement with direct supervisory control. All right, then you should hold and make sure there's tighter supervision and making sure that you hire the right staff and so on. Now, then comes next is the detective control. This is where, if things slip through your preventive control, this is where we should pick it up early. All right. So things like reconciliation, review, monitoring, surveillance, trend analysis. Sometimes when you look at your numbers, that they make sense. It could actually point to certain fraud risks being happening. So this is what we call risk impact. All right. By detecting the risk early, you're able to minimize its impact on the organization. Now, so all this is critical, and one of the most important control is also whistleblowing. Right, this is part of the detective control, and research has shown that it is the number one tool for uncovering fraud, and this is even higher than internal auditor. Now, whistleblowing uncover about 40+%, 44, all right, based on the last recent 2020 Association of Certified Fraud Examiner report. Now, this is in the US context, but I'm sure it also very much applicable globally because we are operating based on the same kind of format. Now, so the internal auditor is the second in terms of the success rate, in terms of about 14%. Then comes the by accident, which is about 5%, and the external auditor comes near 4%. So if you want to rely on the lines of defense, we can't really rely on the external auditor, maybe a little bit on the internal auditor, but most of it has to be making sure that you do have strong culture, strong governance, and strong controls, and most importantly, a good whistleblowing hotline. Okay, I'm going to touch on this hotline later on in a minute. Now, so in terms of fraud risk assessment, there are three fraud risk triangle areas, factors which promote fraud. Now, so governance and culture could actually minimize the someone from rationalizing their fraud. All right, by making sure that you have good practices, you don't have favoritism, you don't you recognize competence where it's necessary, you promote staff where necessary, and so on. Then there's no organization. All right. For example, the ISCA case, he thinks that he has been bypassed promotion and so on, so he wants to get back at the company. So they rationalize and then commit fraud. So make sure you have good, strong practices, fair practices, and this will be minimized. Now, second, preventive control will minimize the likelihood of fraud. And this is to tackle the opportunity aspect of the fraud triangle. So with strong preventive control, then you minimize opportunity for anyone. So it's also kind of a strong deterrence apart from preventive. Now, the last aspect is one area which we might not have much control except for screening the right stuff. All right, when you hire the right people, get the right people onto the bus. All right, and if then someone who could actually easily be pressurized by their own circumstances, for example, gambling, in heavy debts, and so on, or whatever reason, all right, be it market expectation and so on. Not so much for charity, but charity, you've got to look for the personal circumstances. What are the extended financial crisis this person is experiencing and so on. And this could actually put pressure on the person to commit fraud. Now, so in terms of fraud risk assessment, these are the three areas to look out for. All right, I want you to do a quick polling. Okay, you can scan, take a brief moment to scan this QR code. Okay, I'm going to leave it there for a couple more seconds. Okay, quickly scan it, and then you can participate in the poll. Okay, 5 more seconds. All right. All right, do a quick poll. If fraud were to occur in your organization, which of these will likely be the causal factors? All right, so use 100 points to allocate into three of these categories. Okay. Now, the numbers still coming in. Okay, they are quite well distributed with the most number one coming from external personal factor. Well, this is encouraging in the sense that, okay, all right, quite even now. Oh, yes, it's almost equally distributed with more emphasis on personal external circumstances. Now, this is where we got to ensure that you get the right people onto the bus. And this would actually, in turn, going to affect your governance and culture as well, all right? Culture in the sense like these people then would shape the attitude. And that's where the hard work of the board will be even be more challenging. How to shape the culture such that these people are in terms of attitude, in terms of motivation, in terms of values, would be in line with what is expected of the organization. So personal, okay, followed by preventive, followed by governance. Governance, I would think personally, is one area which we should place top priority, if not all are focused on. And this is going to transcend everything else, serves as a strong foundation for both your preventive and detective control. So bottom line, get the right people onto your team. Second, focus on culture. Third, work on your various controls. Now, as I mentioned before, the whistleblowing is one of the effective means to uncovering fraud at about 44%. Now, one way to encourage people to come forward is to make it anonymous, all right? And technology is available right now to be in contact with the person. If we do have web reporting, you are able to maintain the anonymity of the reporter. At the same time, we can keep in contact to get more information to aid in the investigation, all right? So that's good, the help of technology. Now, secondly, awareness. So your key stakeholders, essentially your employees, everyone else, your key agents, outsourced party, and so on, they should be aware of how to file this whistleblowing. All right, it's good that you disseminate this so that any reports go to you first instead of to the authority. So awareness is important. Put it on your website. All right, and this is the most, probably is the easiest way for people to access. Now, thirdly, availability, make it 24/7. Now technology is available. You can launch a report at the comfort of your home. So availabilities can be easily met. Then assurance. Now, this is where your protection against retaliation has to be assured. All right, and this is a promise. If you make this promise, chances are people buy in and be able to report in confidence. And of course, this followed with seriousness. Affirm that you will seriously pursue this. And you can actually help by talking about past successes, case studies, and so on, of the benefits which it brings in terms of the closure of past cases. And the most important thing here is the independence, all right? The party which follow up and independent from management, and most of the time it would be the independent audit committee, all right? Okay, now another polling, in this case, which would likely be more effective in promoting whistleblowing? You have a reward scheme. It can be in terms of monetary, it can be in terms of job promotion and so on, recognition. And on the other hand, you can have penalty. Penalty is when it could be face dismissal or even punitive, other kind of punitive measure, all right? So penalty and reward. So which one do you think would be more effective? Okay. Wow. Everyone is incentivized by reward. Okay. Interesting. All right. Now, I'm going to ask you a second question, follow-up question on this, and see whether you think likewise. Okay, will your answer be different if there is a close relationship between the whistleblower and the wrongdoer? All right, imagine that. Normally in small organization, sometimes you know the perpetrator, and actually you have a close relationship with this person. So which scheme would be more effective in promoting whistleblowing? Okay, let it hit 100 or more. Then. Excellent. Okay. In fact, this is what I obtained from my study. All right, I ran a study on auditors. So give them a case whereby they found that the audit partner is actually contravening the standard, going with the client to have more aggressive treatment on the financial statements, and hence giving rise to material misstatements. And we place them in the different category. So one is a control group here. All right, you can see that the likelihood is somewhat at the low level, but when they're placed in the reward group, all right, you can see two extreme responses. In terms, if there is a presence of close relationship, you can see that it could be even be lower than the control group without any incentive scheme. Now, then if there is no relationship here, you can see that the reward works pretty well. And as for penalty, regardless of relationship or no, it works pretty well. So the takeaway here is that penalty works regardless of whether or not there is close relationship between you and the perpetrator. All right, so maybe that is something we got to think about in incentivizing a whistleblowing scheme. Now, so globally, here in Singapore, we do have a reward scheme. All right, so if you are able to help the IRAS to detect fraud evasion, tax evasion, you can get up to 15% of the rewards of the amount recouped, all right, or 100,000. In US, Securities Exchange Commission even up to the reward up to 30% of the recouped amount. In this case, the amount it ever awarded was 30 US million. And this was awarded to someone outside the US. So imagine that, huge sum. Now, in terms of penalty, based on the Corruption and Drug Trafficking Serious Crimes Act and the Terrorism Act in Singapore, if you don't file a STR, suspicious transaction report, you could be charged criminally. All right, so in the case of TSFA, you could even be jailed. All right, so that's how serious we view anti-terrorism financing. All right, so I'm sure globally there are many other type of schemes, and probably the one working well would probably be the penalty. But of course, with the exception of SEC, but then it comes with a tremendous cost to the government. All right, 30 million of the recoup amount. All right, thank you very much.